All righty. Speaking of being warned, would you like to hear the top secret email, Brian Last, that I was sent to an anonymous email account by a industry expert about the video game industry?
So not a wrestling industry expert, a video game industry expert.
This is a person whose name shall remain nameless. See? But he says, I work in the software industry in a hybrid role as business analyst project manager. Right? And when we were talking about how these video games are not the nuts and bolts of it, but that old Kenny Olivier has been put in charge of it, and they had a problem with the rating because of the blood and the Molotov cocktails and whatever the fuck. Just why is this thing taking so dead burn long, right? That's been the topic of everybody's conversation. Well, this person, experienced in the software industry, has a look at how video games are or would be developed and what role different people would play. Would you like to hear some of this?
Yes, I would.
Okay. In this case, in this person's professional role as a business analyst, project manager, he would meet with the product owner, but in this instance, it would be Twinkle Toes, the person in charge of the project, and he would document what they're looking for in an app or software, prioritize what needs to be built, meet with the development team, and oversee the process of building, testing, and the rollout. Twinkle Toes hits the trifecta of what makes a terrible product owner because, number one, he has too much say in what will be built. Number two, knows too much about what he wants to see in the game. And number three, most importantly, has no discipline in prioritizing what needs to be built first. Developers build the underlying architecture, the foundation, based on the agreed-upon set of requirements. So if Twinkle Toes initially agreed to building a townhouse, but later says that he changed his mind and now wants a Taj Mahal, it'll mess up the whole timeline. Every new set of bells and whistles exponentially increases the time to build, test, and roll out the new game. You might wonder how hard can it be to have a Molotov cocktail in a wrestling video game. I've always wondered that. Haven't you, Brian?
No, I mean, I've played games with Molotov cocktails. It seems pretty easy.
Well, it's not. It's not. The game doesn't think for itself. You have to clearly define what it can and cannot do. You have to think of all the scenarios. You have to define who can throw the Molotov cocktail. Does the wrestler have to be at a certain energy level and above to throw the Molotov cocktail? What should happen if the player tries to throw the Molotov cocktail into the crowd? And are Molotov cocktails available in all matches, etc.? A single line of requirements sometimes translates to hundreds of lines of code. Every time you add these new bells and whistles, you risk breaking other parts of the game and risk it becoming a house of cards. The project manager will have to be masterful in reminding the product owner to stick to the core functionality of the game, which is wrestlers wrestling, and not bells and whistles like Molotov cocktails and piss balloons. If the project has lax timelines and no budget constraints, the development team and the project manager will be more than happy to continue building new bells and whistles and keep billing Tony Khan for them. As the principal stakeholder, Tony Khan would have to step in and set strict timelines and budget constraints in order for the video game to finally come out. They can always roll out new features in future versions of the game because they'll need to have new features for people to buy newer versions of the game every year. WWE has been releasing newer versions of the game every year since 2000. So not only that, but that brings up an interesting point. You're buying a game for a fucking year and then they want you to buy another game. Why, I still have the toys that I had when I was 6 years old that still work.
It's not exactly how it is. If you bought Grand Theft Auto years ago, there are downloads and various packages you could add to the game you already have.
Well, sounds like some kind of scam to me. But anyway, in all seriousness, when you think about it, is that what's going on? Is Twinkle Toes saying, well, do this or do that or do the other thing? And they're saying, sure, as long as Tony's paying for it, we'll do whatever the fuck you want us to do. Very interesting. But stupid. Hello?
Speaking of stupid.
All right, I thought that email would energize you to say, well, what in the wide world of sports is going on over there?
You know, I mean, at this point, and I feel bad saying this, I'd rather save up my Tony comments for later in the show for Dynamite, because it's like, it's ridiculous. We all know what this is. Whatever you think of what he did to wrestling, he took someone who likes playing games and put him in charge of making, I was going to say a multi-million-dollar game. At this point, I mean, they're saying it's $20 million at least sunk into it.
Go.
By the way, it's also a person who has very poor people skills when it comes to being a manager of people. And you'll be hearing more about that in the future. So I think it's been a colossal mistake. We'll see when the game comes out. If it makes money, I'll be surprised. We'll see if it comes out and it makes money, if it is critically acclaimed. But, it was kind of like, imagine if you were like 20 years old and all of a sudden you had a bunch of money and all of a sudden you had a bunch of friends and you just wanted to spend all this money and say, hey, yeah, you do this. What do you like to do? I like to draw pictures. Okay, go start a newspaper comic. Just handing people fucking things that they shouldn't be doing. But in a lot of ways, that's the story of AEW.
Well, another one of the features that's taken it a long time to get to market because of the intricate nature of how they have to write all the hundreds and thousands of lines of code and everything is, from what I understand, when the game comes out, each wrestler is going to have the ability to shave their own balls. Were you aware of this?
I have not heard this. I do not know that this is true. In fact, I think it is not.
Well, no, as a matter of fact, they had it screwed up at the start because they had some of the girl wrestlers shaving their own balls too, and that obviously didn't work. So that's one of those lines of code that they had to go back and rewrite. But at least we know now that if you're a male wrestler on the AEW roster in the video game, you'll be able to shave your own balls. But of course, that's nothing that we all can't do already. And we've been doing it for some time, because even before the AEW video game Take Forever comes out, we've been telling people how they can shave their own balls for, years now. And doesn't the whole basically world smell better as a result of that? When you think about the crotch rot that was running rampant just 5 or 10 years ago in this country. And then hygiene has been upgraded, and the hygiene awareness of your crotchal and testicle area has been increased significantly and exponentially through the last several years. I believe it's because of our podcast, Brian. I believe it's because we have brought this pressing problem of ball stank and crotch rot to the public consciousness. And for that, we have to thank our friends at Manscaped. Because after all, they're the ones leading the charge. They're the ones. If it wasn't for them, we would remain blissfully ignorant. We'd still be doing things the old way. I've told you that back in my day, kids, when you had to cut the hair off of your balls and crotch by candlelight with a pair of pinking shears, and my God, some of the problems that you encountered there, well, just the clippage alone led to a lot of guys being sterile, and then there's the bad aim when you try to get in some of those angles. But now Manscaped has it all taken care of. And not only that, folks, but they have different products for different applications. You don't have to use the same pinking shears, or in potentially some cases, your dog's poopy butt trimmers. You don't have to use those on your nose hair and your ear hair and your face hair and your ball hair. You don't have to cross-pollinate all of the various implements that you use now for the various hairs and growths on your body, because they got it all taken care of. And with the Performance Package 4.0, you're going to get the Lawnmower 4.0 trimmer. the most incredible personal grooming implement ever developed with the LED light. So you can backlight those things and look like oak trees, and you can trim them all down just like the wind blowing in the Louisville area. And the nose and ear hair trimmer called the Weed Whacker. So now you'll be able to honk and snort much more easily without all that blockage. The Crop Preserver Ball Deodorant, the Crop Reviver Toner, the Performance Boxer Briefs, and a travel bag to hold all your goodies in. No, not those goodies. You already have a bag for those. We're talking about the goodies from Manscaped. And of course, all you got to do right now is head over to manscaped.com and use the code DRIVE, DRIVE, to get 20% off and free shipping on the Performance Package 4.0, where you can eliminate odor. And you can make your nether regions a conversation piece. If you do it right, these things are very artistic. You can make little designs. It can be a flamingo. It can be a cute little bunny with twinkly bunny ears, whatever you like. And it can start conversations at your neighborhood Applebee's. So right now, manscaped.com, use the code DRIVE, 20% off and free shipping. Your balls and your server at Applebee's will thank you.
I don't know why this reminded me of it. Of course, check out Manscaped, a fine company, fine sponsor.
Fine people.